But the thought crossed is the fact that the number of times and I know you guys have, and every shooter I know has done this, where a friend dies and the wife is left with these guns, and we dig into our pockets and we spend retail plus 30%, and we buy 2 or 3 guns from her, and then 2 or 3 friends do it, and 2 or 3 more friends do it. And then pretty soon, she's back on her feet.
Well, hello again, everybody. It's us, the Gun Cranks. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Weed, along with Tom McKee, the editor of American Handgunner magazine, and Roy Huntington, the special assignments editor for both of our magazines. Hello, gentlemen.
Top of the afternoon,
man.
Yep.
What are your pronouns so I can address you properly during this show?
Yeah, your Highness. I am your Highness.
I don't think that's in the list of acceptable pronouns.
Yeah, no.
Well, it's great that everybody's joining us. Actually, this is take 2. It's pretty funny. Take 1, we started, and then we see Tom's arms waving hysterically, but we're not hearing a word he's saying. So, technology.
I was not panicked. That was a calm, cool, and collected response to an audio problem.
I told Brent to go on anyway, though.
You can't panic in these kind of situations, or everything goes down the tube.
Okay. Well, I would say the captain of the Titanic had less arm motion than what you did, but if that wasn't panic, good for you.
Hey, in the movie, he was calm, cool, and collected. So
that's true. I'm thinking in real life, he was running around the bridge screaming like a little girl, but maybe not. Well, anyway, we've got a topic that I guess it could be kind of heavy and downy, but we'll put our inimitable Gun Crank spin on it. So hopefully it'll be a little bit of enjoyment. But we're infotainment. That's the word I'm looking for. But today we're going to talk about you're going to die. You know that? You're going to die. I'm going to die. Roy, Tom are going to die. We're all going to die. But we were talking about
death rate only hit 97% last year. So,
okay.
It's up there, the death rate, but it's
kind of like
not 100%, is it?
Well, over the term of a lifetime, yes, it's 100%. I'm pretty sure of that. So this topic came up. We recently had a friend pass, Jim Scouten. He's well known in the shooting community. He's had a television show for a long time, does a lot of things in the media, and you may have seen that he passed recently. And I've interviewed him on the Guns Magazine podcast. We all know him pretty well. And Roy pointed out that this would be a good time to talk about what are you going to do when you croak off and you've got a bunch of guns in the closet? And unfortunately, that's a pretty common problem. And we're going to talk about some of the things that maybe you can do before it happens, because here's tip number 1. You can't do it after you pass. So just something to think about. But Roy, before we get too far into it, talk about Jim Scouten just a little bit, if folks don't know who he is.
Jim was a certifiable character, and a lot of people don't know. Jim actually cut his teeth in the actual professional television journalism, and he was an anchor and a reporter and all that kind of stuff. But I remember him from 30 years ago. He had a television show about cars. It was on one of the, Auto Trend or something like that. But even then, I didn't know Jim, but I thought, who is this guy with this voice? And you probably would recognize, if you don't know who we're talking about, Jim had this perfect radio voice, and
he did.
And so, yeah, I worked with Jim a few times. As a matter of fact, he was going to fly here before the pandemonium started and do some shows in Roy's backyard, but then the pandemonium happened. But Jim was really funny. I told him to just come on and we'll just shoot it in the backyard. Well, that really made him nervous because everything was scripted. When you saw Jim on his TV show, every single line was scripted and timed, and everything was exactly done like that. And I did an interview with him and Les Bear one time at the SHOT Show, and he about panicked because I just said, here, turn the camera on. Well, here's Les. Les, come here. We're going to do an interview. And Jim, he just panicked.
It's exactly like the Gun Cranks, right? Yeah. Everything is scripted and controlled.
scripted perfectly down to the microsecond. So, but with Jim's passing, though, it made me just think about these kind of things before. And there, of course, there's a lot of things you can do. But one of the things I wanted to talk about really was to sort of throw kudos out to our fellow shooters out there, is that uh, someone who worked for us, Tiger McKee, passed away unexpectedly recently. And Tiger was a sweetheart of a man and well respected in the industry. And when you see things like, or hear things like honorable and trustworthy, that was Tiger. Well, he died unexpectedly, and that left his wife in a lurch. And so she called me and we talked about what can she do, what are her options. And as a matter of fact, 2 or 3 other people in the industry, a couple of really big names in the industry have partnered up with her to help her sell Tiger's firearms inventory. But the thought crossed is the fact that the number of times and I know you guys have, and every shooter I know has done this, where a friend dies and the wife is left with these guns, and we dig into our pockets and we spend retail plus 30%, and we buy 2 or 3 guns from her, and then 2 or 3 friends do it, and 2 or 3 more friends do it. And then pretty soon, she's back on her feet. And, we have these guns we didn't really need, but I thought that's the kind of people that most of the shooters are who I know. And, a little ancillary story to this is Tiger was building some custom revolvers. And when he passed away, he had 7, I think, that were in various stages of build. So Gretchen called me up and said, I don't, I don't really know what to do. So I said, well, send them to me and I'll finish them for you. Right. And so that relieved that problem and stuff. And so then I called the guys who had ordered these guns from Tiger, and I said, just be patient with me, but I will finish these for you guys. And so just so you know what's going on. And every single one of them said, don't hurry. If I need to spend more money, just tell me. If there's anything I can do, all these guys were just complete gentlemen about it,
Mhm.
and it made me think about all the whining crybabies, if this had been certain other people who we would know, what do you mean? I don't want to do this. And I paid my money. These guys did nothing, just very supportive, very understanding, very patient. So my hat's off to all you fellows and ladies for doing that kind of stuff. So, but as Brent says, we should be thinking about this before it happens.
Well, I interviewed Dwight Van Brunt back, I think, episode number 35 of the Guns Magazine podcast. And I want to talk to him again because he had so much great information. If you don't know, I can't think of the name of his company off the top of my head, but that's what he does for a living.
Yes, Sportsman's Legacy.
Dwight is one of the leading people in the industry in terms of selling high-end type of gun collections. And he had a lot of great information. But my biggest takeaway from our conversation was plan for this, because that's the biggest problem. Nobody does, because nobody wants to think about dying. And he pointed out something that I hadn't really thought about, and he's absolutely correct. Folks of a certain age, all of us, we've got kids, and they would probably take a gun or 2 from your collection. But he said it's extremely common now. Many kids don't want the guns at all. I mean, I would be happy to, have all of my grandfather's guns. My dad didn't own any guns, so I didn't get any. But he said it's real common. Grandpa passes, and used to be the family couldn't wait to get these legacy guns, and now it's not like that. So if you think that your gun collection will, go to a good home or something, it may, or it may end up at the pawn shop. So you need to be planning on that stuff, because unless you have a clear heir to your legacy that wants all of your guns, if you're not thinking about where they go, you're really behind the curve on it. So
I think you ought to seriously consider, and it can be an informal thing. I don't know if it has to be a legally binding document, but communicate with your spouse on who a designated individual is, like an unofficial executor of your guns, who's the advisor, you know, and say, hey, this person's gonna, that happens unexpectedly. This person will help you out and make sure that you don't just get what I told you I paid for them back years ago, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the elephant in the room, right, guys? I mean,
Yeah. I hope my
hey,
wife
I got
sells
such
my
a deal on
guns.
this one, honey.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a saying, I
It was
hope my
hardly
wife sells
anything.
my guns for what they're worth, not what I told her I paid for them.
Exactly. So
Exactly.
you need to find somebody really smooth and polished to kind of grease the skids on that communication there. It's like,
Yeah.
Well,
oh,
I've helped a lot of women with that very thing over the years, because you know how it is. If you're the gun guy, you're the resident gun guy, then everybody when they have these questions, they come to you and say, "Hey, Roy, what should I do? Uncle Fred died," And well, I've helped them avoid a lot of things, because a lot of times you'll hear people say, "Well, I went to the local gun store and I sold them my grandpa's guns," and they got like 25% of what they were probably
mm-hmm.
worth, and because
Yep.
they were clueless. And so I think that's critical. The other thing that is also another elephant in the room is sell the guns while you're alive. I mean, I'm doing that right now. I'm selling a lot of my collection off slowly but surely, all through Dwight, as a matter of fact. And because you get some cash, which is nice. You could buy bicycles for your grandchildren, or whatever you want to do. But the other thing is that it doesn't leave your wife with a safe full of things that she probably doesn't really know what to do with. you know
Yep.
and I know this one guy, and some people would say, oh, he's anal retentive, and I just think he's really organized. And he's got a loose leaf folder, and it's got photos of all his guns, what he paid for them, what he thinks the value is. I mean, there it all is right there. It's like,
Yep.
my gosh.
And that's great for insurance purposes too, because people never think they're going to die and they never think they're going to be a victim of a crime. And yeah, they might take that binder with them when they clean out your safe, but most burglars, in my experience, aren't that organized. Otherwise, they wouldn't be burglars. So if on your shelf you've got a nice ring binder that's got, as they say, provenance of any paperwork, what you paid for the gun. And as Dwight suggested, like in our case, we've got guns that were on the cover of magazines or have been reviewed or may have been owned by somebody who was kind of important. It's nice to have all that documentation because, again, if something happens, either insurance wise or you're passing, at least you've got all that stuff in one place. And I think we can all agree, and I think probably every longtime gun owner has seen it, where a buddy passes, and as you said, Roy, the wife just doesn't have a clue. She's traumatized. She doesn't know where to even begin her life, let alone those guns in the safe, and they end up going for pennies on the dollar, or sometimes just disappearing. So I can't emphasize enough. You really need to be planning for these bad things that we don't ever want to think or talk about.
Yeah, and it's funny. I hear people say, a lot of the gun guys I know, they say, "Oh no, I never sell any guns. I've never sold a gun in my life." And it's like, okay, if you're a pre-war Winchester lever action collector, and you've got 75 of them, okay, I understand that. You're actively doing something like that. You're collecting military 1911s. But if you're just accumulating, which is what most shooters do, it's like, hey, that's cool. I'll buy that. Oh, hey, look at that. Oh, hey, boy, I don't have one of those, right? And then you end up with a safe full of guns. Have you ever bought a gun and come home and looked and realized that actually you already had one in the back of the safe that you bought
Yeah.
20 years ago? I have done that. How stupid is that? Right.
Yep.
And I mean, I look at the guns that I shoot all the time, and it's like maybe 10 or 15 guns. Those are the ones that seem to get the work all the time. And the rest have been photo props for me basically over the years,
Mm.
and so I'll be honest with you, it feels good to get rid of that stuff because, I mean, I don't know, they're not anything that's precious, and they're not, up the pyramid. And so if you sell one, trust me, the world doesn't end. you know, you get a
Mm.
check and you can cash it, and then you can put that, to work. But I don't know. A friend of mine died not too long ago, and he had over 300 guns,
Wow.
and a lot of them were stupid. I mean, he had 25 Glocks, Right? Okay. Not that Glocks are stupid. I'm not saying that. But I mean, what on earth were you doing with 25 Glock Model 19s? I don't know. And so he just bang died. And now his wife has no idea where to start. She didn't even know the combination to his gun safes. How's that one? You
Yep.
know? And so she reached out to me, and then I fortunately pointed her in some good directions. So,
And I will throw another thing in here. This is the cop in me coming out. If you have stuff in your gun closet, your safe, your garage, your storage unit, I could tell lots of stories, and I won't name names, but if there's anything there that maybe have been acquired, well, maybe let's just say stuff that you probably shouldn't have. Like I had a buddy that was cleaning out a storage unit for a friend and stuck his hand on a Claymore mine. And the person who owned the storage unit is the kind of person that probably would have got his hands on a live Claymore. Fortunately, it was one of those, okay, what do I do now? Because he was alone. His phone was in the truck and he's got his hand on a Claymore. And he just, and he's also thinking, he's also the kind of guy, he might have put a tripwire in here or something. Turns out it was a practice Claymore, but I've known guys that, or as a police officer, hey, we found this dynamite in Uncle Fred's closet and it's all, oozing nitroglycerin and all that. We had somebody come up to the police station years ago and set a box of it on the counter that they had found. Yes. Yes. And it's like, and we're all leaving real
like
quietly.
Slump,
Grandpa's dynamite.
So I've got a grenade paperweight. It's an inert, drilled out pineapple grenade. But I got to thinking, if somebody's digging through my safe after something happens to me, maybe I ought to make it a little more clear that that's just inert. Or if you got some blasting caps, or you've got that gun that might fall under certain regulations, because there's a lot of places, say California or Illinois, that you may have bought a gun today and tomorrow it's illegal. So, why leave your wife saddled with, oh, great, you've got a whole box full of 25 round magazines. Yeah, you wanted to hang on to them while you were alive, but now she's got to deal with something that makes her a felon. So I don't know the answer to all these questions, but just be thinking out next time you open your gun safe and go, okay, I dropped dead and now my best friend is looking through here. What's he going to do with that? So just something else to think about.
So you're saying you need to plan when you die.
Yeah,
you plan your death? Is that what you're saying?
When you die.
Well, just
so the day before you can deal with all that stuff.
Quickly
right?
make the phone call.
Okay.
I find it very freeing to think today could be the day. So I want to make sure things are kind of under control. And then when it's not the day, you're blessed.
You win.
That's just a little philosophy.
We used to do gun buys. The local, people would bring your gun you don't want, we'll give you $100, that kind of a thing. And so I worked a couple of those, and it was always interesting. Sometimes it was painful because you see what people bring in. It's like,
yeah,
that's actually your grandfather's police duty revolver from 1930. Are you sure you want to sell that to them for $100? And they used to lose our mind if we tried to buy a gun from anybody. And but there were more than one occasion where people showed up with full auto guns, so they were bringbacks from Vietnam, even bringbacks from World War II. I remember distinctly, I walked in the range and there was an MP40 German, Schmeiser machine gun sitting there. And I said, wow, what's that? I thought it was just a replica or something like that. They said, oh no, that was a gun buyback. It's like, holy cow.
That's awful. I've heard the apocryphal story of a little lady. This is a gun my husband had. That's a 1928 Thompson. Are you sure? I don't want to. You take it. Oh. We're going to cut them in half. No.
I know, it's a shame. But since we're talking about and the fact that, because this all started with the fact that I've seen shooters pay more than they should for a gun to help somebody. When I was here in Joplin when the tornado hit 2011, I think it was, this huge tornado, knocked out a third of the city. But the locals, and I will call them the gun owners of America here, we're pretty rural and all that. I mean, literally within an hour of the tornado leaving, there were farmers and ranchers showing up here with tractors and heavy equipment and skid steers, clearing roads, clearing everything. And these are the same guys, that we're talking about. And so, what we're talking about here, it always makes me sad when I hear people who are uninformed, you know, assign us a name, all the same. And it's not at all that case. And so do, as Brent says, do your part and start selling your
To
collection
maintain that
before you
tradition.
die. That's right.
Yeah.
And maintain that tradition. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's a good thing.
Well, even though if you guys have been following the news about country music, small towns are just cesspools of racism and awfulness and all that. So you guys know what I'm talking about on that, the
Yeah.
Jason Aldean controversy. So yeah, it's interesting to hear what certain folks in big cities on coast seem to think of all of us. Well, Tom, you're on the coast, so maybe you're an East Coast liberal, but the rest of us live in free America.
South Carolina is largely
you're
free America.
yeah, exactly.
Hey Brent, let's make sure we put Sportsman's Legacy's link
Okay.
down below, because I think you could do Gun Broker, you could do Guns America, you could do a lot of things like that. But Dwight actually would accept your guns to do all of the work, and then when they sell, you get a check.
Yep.
And he's very well connected in the industry, and he does a good job. So
Yep. And sometimes people, well, we'll just do it ourselves because then all the money goes to us. Yeah, but if you've got something you don't understand the value to, and you let it go for a song, are you really saving money? No, I think you're losing money. So hiring professionals, like you said, if it's a Glock 19, everybody pretty much knows what a Glock 19 is worth. If it's a Glock 19 that was owned by Saddam Hussein, maybe you need to get a professional involved. So that would be my suggestion. Well, guys, we've reached our time limit already. Any closing thoughts on the closing of your own personal chapter in life?
Yeah, just don't dally. Be thoughtful. And it's like, picture, okay, if you're a guy and you're a shooter and your wife's a seamstress and she has 35 sewing machines and she dies tomorrow, it's like, what are you gonna do?
That's a great analogy.
I mean, what are you gonna?
Works both ways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, how am I? What do I do with this stuff?
Yep.
And so, don't do that.
Excellent. Well, as always, I remind you, visit gunsmagazine.com, AmericanHandgunner.com. You can listen to the Guns Magazine podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. You can listen at all podcast directories. And I got to say, a little sidebar here. I was just traveling last week and I listened to the Gun Cranks podcast on my car radios. I was traveling through the prairies of Northern Illinois. It was our episode on potato guns. And I'm telling you, I was still crying. I was there when we recorded it, and listening to it 2 weeks later on the podcast, I was still crying. So, Tom, why don't you talk about the Gun Cranks podcast and the audio side of it?
Yeah, for those of you who like listening, and you know what? Podcast is awesome when you're mowing the lawn or driving, as Brent was just talking about. We launched that quite some time ago, so it's available on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon. All the major podcast networks have us, so just search for Gun Cranks Podcast, and you'll find it.
And definitely your first episode you should check out would be Tater Guns, if you've not seen it. And actually, I think it's so funny. That's one of those. I'm on listen number 3. I when I'm having a bad day and I need some cheering up, that's a pretty good one. So
just search for episode 215.
215.
That's the real number. And you know why I said that? We've got a bunch of episodes out there.
Yeah,
excellent. We've been doing this a while. Dang,
we have. So, well, cool, guys. On closing on that note, all I'm going to say is flaming pigeon. So, on behalf of Roy Huntington and Tom McHale, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat saying check us out next week, and we'll be back. It's the Gun Cranks. See you guys later. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat, along with Tom McHale, the editor of American Handgunner, Eric Yellowhouse, the editor of AmericanPop.com, and man about town, Roy Huntington.